Hi, I'm Caleb Froedge, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. How many of you have taken a moment in the day to stop and consider one of the small things that God has created? My son has a fish tank in his room, and in it there is one small mystery snail, about the size of a quarter, and one small blue betta fish. And for two little creatures living in an environment of about 10 gallons of water, I still find their activities quite fascinating. The blue fish will mostly just swim around, but occasionally it will lay on a leaf for a bed. The mystery snail, however, is a little different in that it is almost always slowly but ravenously doing the work of a scavenger, eating the algae and green growth. It is a small work to consider, but a work we really appreciate, as the tank does not need to be cleaned as often. We are thankful for the small little snail, and far from despising the daily work that God created it to do. Now you might think, why would anyone despise a work that God created just because it is small? Especially if it is a very valuable work. And this brings us to the verse for today. It is Zechariah 4 in verse 10, and it says, "For who has despised the day of small things? For these 7 rejoice to see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. They are the eyes of the Lord, which scan to and fro throughout the whole earth." God inspired Zechariah to pose this question, as some had despised the work to rebuild the temple. Why was it looked down upon? Well, because it was going to be smaller, physically speaking, than the first temple that God allowed Solomon to build. But God makes it clear in this verse that we are not to despise the small things, or the start of a work that is in its infancy. God oftentimes begins small, like the grain of a mustard seed. And although the temple would be smaller than the first, it is still very important to God and God's plan to build the temple that He would complete. The temple was to be a house of worship, prayer, and education, and a shining light for other nations to consider. Also, we should consider the incredible fact that later on, with Jesus Christ's first coming, He spent time in the temple, teaching in the temple, and at times zealously protected the integrity of the temple to the honor of God. It was a very special place, and God knew it would be, despite being smaller than the previous temple and still in its infancy. God took notice of it and rejoiced in it. And this is something that we can rejoice in as well, as we are reminded of God's willingness to work with mankind, with individuals who have such a humble beginning. God knows there's a lot of growth and building of holy righteous character that is needed. He knows that it is not yet complete, but at the same time, He recognizes the incredible potential for human beings. In Hebrews 2 and verse 6, it says, "What is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you take care of him? You have made him a little lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and set him over the works of your hands." The reality of mankind's potential is that not only does God mercifully take notice of human beings, but there is also an incredible opportunity in the future to receive honor and glory, and to even have responsibility over the works that God started with His own hands. We do not dwell in eternity yet, because there is still a work to be done while on earth. It is a work that God Himself initiated, and while our physical existence started off very small, later on it is referenced in 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 19 as being the temple of the Holy Spirit, a temple that is not our own because we have been bought at a price by God. And as a result, we are to glorify God in our bodies by fleeing sin and living holy, righteous lives. This work is a building process, and it may seem like a small work that no one else takes notice of, but it is a work that God started and is also faithful to complete.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.